Good morning. If you're watching this is World History 2, Unit 16. Last unit we're doing. Before we get to the notes, a couple things we need to talk about. First things first, SOL is on Friday. I emailed you this morning if you had to take it, or if you are on the list I was given. A couple of you that transferred in, still kind of iffy. I would plan on taking it, but the ones I know for sure who have to take it, I emailed this morning. As far as who tests in the morning, who tests in the afternoon, what time, I don't know any of that yet. When I do, I will let you all know. For Unit 16, all you have to do is the notes, and that is uploaded. Once we're done with these notes, we will start a review. I'll upload a couple of review videos today from another history teacher. Her name is Miss DeLong, and they are great videos. Tomorrow, I will personally go through all the review stuff. I'll upload that video, and I will upload stuff for you guys to use to review as well. So if you have any questions on any of that, please let me know. And this review is not only for the SOL, this review is for the final as well. So it works the same way. That being said, let's knock out Unit 16 real quick. Developing nations. Basically what this unit is the contemporary world, the modern world. Basically what's been going on since about 1990 or so. So both developing nations face many challenges, including migration, ethnic and religious conflict, new technologies, things like that. Refugees are people who are fleeing conflict in their home country. It can be conflict, it can be famine, disease, anything like that. They're fleeing a problem in their home country. They're considered refugees. Guest workers are migrants who move to developed nations, work for a season or two, and go home. Okay? They're literally just guests in the nation, and they work and then go home. But then thinking religious conflict in the Middle East, this conflict mainly centers around Israel and Palestine. Okay, or Israel and their Arab neighbors over the conflict of Palestine. And we talked about that last week and the week before, so we're not going to hit it again. Northern Ireland, this conflict is between Protestants and Catholics. Okay? Northern Ireland, although it is on the island of Ireland, is technically a part of Great Britain. Okay? Britain is Protestant, so the police force there is Protestant, backed by the British. The Catholics did not like this. The Catholics were treated as second-class citizens, and there was a paramilitary group, the Provisional Irish Republican Army, that took up arms against the British. And this time period was known as the Troubles. Now, I can stand here and talk about this for weeks. I love the history of Northern Ireland. It was my senior seminar class, How to Take It Radford. I just fell in love with the subject. I wrote a 27-page paper on how the IRA fought this war. I mean,
it was making you. It was making you do that.
I mean, it was just an assignment I had to do. I enjoyed doing it. I enjoyed the research. I enjoyed writing it. It was good. It was nice to learn. But that's the conflict in Northern Ireland. In the Balkans, this is the Bosnian genocide. This is the breakup of Yugoslavia. Croats, Serbs, Bosnians, they all just hated each other and caused a genocide there. The Horn of Africa, this is Somalia, Ethiopia, areas like that. South Asia, you have the Hindu-Muslim conflict in India over the region of Kashmir. You also have a genocide occurring in Myanmar or Burma. This is the Rohingya. Muslims are killed by the Buddhists. You have the impact.
Death in our boxes.
Awesome. Impact of new technologies. My sister went to Europe. What was this? 2 years ago? just over 2 years ago, about 2.5 years ago. I could pick up my phone. I couldn't call her, but, over phone because international dialing, but I could FaceTime her through Facebook Messenger or text her through that and be in contact with her immediately, even though she was half the world away. That's instantaneous communications. Now, not everyone has access to this technology. That's why it's widespread but unequal. A lot of people do, but not everyone does. Does that make sense? Okay. Genetic engineering, bioethics. Genetic engineering is cutting edge technology. Basically what this is y'all know Build-A-Bear? Everybody knows what Build-A-Bear is? You go, you get to pick out your stuffed animal, stuff them, put the heart in it, whatever. Okay? Genetic engineering is the beginnings of Build-A-Baby. Okay? It's getting to the point where scientists can pick out certain genes, like genes that can cause different color hair or eyes, or say your family has a history of early baldness or obesity or cancer. They're starting to be able to identify these genes and want to get to a point where they can remove the genes. Okay? And genetically engineer a baby. Now, that's down the road. Right now, genetic engineering is mainly talking about like crops and farm animals. They're able to genetically engineer chickens to grow bigger and be more resistant to disease. So when you kill the chicken, you get more meat. You can make more money off of it. Make sense? Same thing with like genetically engineered corn or things like that. You'll see this stuff marketed as GMOs, okay, genetically modified organisms. Bioethics, what this is talking about is the right and wrong parts of biology. What's considered right? What's considered morally and ethically right? So say, like stem cells. Stem cell research is big into the bioethic because a lot of the time stem cells are taken from fetuses. Okay? What these stem cells do is they can be used in crazy treatments for like cancer or Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all this stuff to try and fix these horrible diseases. But it comes down to, is it worth it to harvest the stem cells to use against these diseases? And that's that ethical question. Okay? This also comes in with cloning. Do scientists have the right to play God? To create life where there wasn't? Or copy life, I guess, technically, because clones, whatever. That's what bioethics is. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not going to stand up here and tell you what's right and wrong. That's not my place. I'm just explaining what it is. Developed and developing nations are characterized by different levels of economic development, population characteristics, social conditions. We're going to go into all these in the next couple of slides, so I'm not going to hit them too hard right here. Third world country, that's more of a Cold War era deal, so we're just focused on developed and developing. Okay? So first things first, developed countries. In developed countries, a high percent of the population tends to live in cities and towns. Some cities lack the resources to provide necessary amenities, but a lot of them provide quite a bit. You have high industrialization. You have an economy based on continuous and self-sustaining growth. Economic development can impact the environment and society. In developed countries, a higher percentage of the population can read and write. Sometimes 90% or more. That's literacy. Okay, if you're literate, it means you can read and write. If you're illiterate, it means you cannot read and write. Easy enough? Healthcare in developed countries is often more advanced with a higher percentage of healthcare workers per person. So you can have a doctor who sees 100 people. But it's one doctor per 100 and not one doctor per every 1,000 people. Make sense? Like if I needed to right now, I could call my son's doctor and get him an appointment for this afternoon. Like that. Super easy. Because we have a lot of doctors. Okay? The birth rate's usually lower with an increased average lifespan. In developed nations, it is very rare, it's not impossible, but it's rare for something to go horribly wrong when a baby's born. Okay? Because of our high rate of doctors, our high amount of doctors, our high level of healthcare, we're very sophisticated healthcare, that if something goes wrong when the baby's being born, say the baby's not breathing right, or has a hole in the heart or something, that's not a death sentence for that baby. Okay? The baby can be taken care of. Yes, sir.
This is true, and she's going to do from first go.
Okay, come on.
And I'm going to show her pass upstairs or something.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, when you get in, you can just sit wherever you want. Okay. What was I saying?
Something about babies.
Thank you. Okay. Like my niece. Okay, I guess technically she's my niece. Anyway, it's my wife's stepbrother's child. So I guess that makes her my niece. Technically. Anyway, whatever. When she was born, she had a hole in her heart. Okay? She had to have open heart surgery when she was like 6 months old. She just turned 3 or 4 back in July. Doing fine. Okay? These things that would have been death sentences 100 years ago, it's just like oh, well, that sucks, but we'll get through it. It's fine. Make sense? So that's what the high healthcare and the good amount of healthcare can do. Sorry. You all are a strain on your parents. When you get older and you have kids, you will understand this. Kids are expensive. I mean, expensive. I have that black folder over there. It's end of the month. That's my bill folder. Okay? I put my bills in there. I pay them at the end of the month. There's at least 15 in there that are medical bills for my kid. Kids are expensive.
I got a baby.
Now, with developed nations, parents can realize, hey, I don't think we want to have any more kids. And because it's our healthcare system, we have the ability to stop having kids. Whether it's birth control or surgeries or things like that. You can stop having children when you want to stop having children. Developing nations, not so much because they don't have access to that healthcare. Does that make sense? That's why the birth rate's lower, but lifespan's longer, infant mortality is lower in developed nations than developing. Yes, there's less babies born, but less babies die. Make sense? Questions on developed countries? Okay. Developing countries. This is basically just the opposite of the other stuff. Okay? Higher percentage of the population tends to live in rural areas than urban. They live more in the farmland than in the city. They have low industrialization, can be non-existent. So they have more of an agriculture-based economy than industry. Subsistence farming is just growing enough food for your family and just your family. Go on in. All right. Any desk you want except for this one. Okay. Did they get you a Chromebook and everything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. If you'll just log on to Classroom, there is a symptom checker at the top. If you'll fill that out for me. And then we're on the Unit 16 notes. What was I saying?
Oh shit, hold on.
Okay, subsistence farming. Basically, the difference is in this is if this desk is all the land I own. Okay? It's a small amount of land, and everything I grow on this land is for my family to eat. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, if every desk in here was my land, and yes, I grow this for my family, but all of that is crops I grow to sell, that's not subsistence farming. That's commercial farming. Does that make sense? Okay. In undeveloped developing countries, sometimes 50% or less of the population can read. Healthcare is very poor with few healthcare workers. So you got one doctor per 1,000 people. Because of that, the death rate's very high. Okay? If you don't have a lot of doctors, more people die. Makes sense, right? Birth rate's very high. Infant mortality rate is high. That's because they have a lot of children as kind of insurance. Okay? In the United States, if your family wants 3 kids, okay, or if they just want a kid to carry on the family name, whatever, you can have 1 kid, and there's a 9 and 10% chance that kid's going to live to be old enough to have more children and carry on the family name. Make sense? Whereas here, if you have 1 kid, there's a good shot that kid's going to die. So you have to have more than 1 kid for your family to continue.
So you can have spares, right?
Exactly, it's insurance. I mean, it's a dark way of looking at it, but it's the truth. Okay? Okay, so challenges. Environmentally, you have pollution, loss of habitat, and climate change. Socially, you have poverty. This is being poor. Poor health due to lack of doctors, lack of health care, things like that. Illiteracy is the inability to read due to a small amount of schools. Famine, this is starving to death. Okay, famine is when, say, a disease wipes out all the crops in the nation. Or there's a war and the farms are taken over by the opposing country or whatever. There's a lack of food, so people starve to death. You have migration. When people are faced with all of this, they move. Okay? Now, I know that illegal immigration is a hot button topic, okay? People will fight tooth and nail back and forth about illegal immigration. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong. But I want you guys to understand this. The world needs to be more kind, just in general. I don't care who you vote for. I don't really care what you believe, but people just need to be nicer to one another and try to understand where other people are coming from, and people will fight a whole lot less. Okay, put yourself in their shoes. If you're facing, let's say, high unemployment, you can't get a job, so you're poor. Because you can't get a job, you can't provide health care for your family. Your children can't go to school, and there's a war going on in your country, and the food's gone. Your children are going to starve to death. But you know, if you take your family and you cross that river, I'm just using the Rio Grande as an example because a lot of the illegal immigration arguments based on the southern United States. You know, if you cross that river, yes, it's illegal. Yes, you can wait in line and fill it out, but you don't have the time to wait in line. You're trying to take care of your family. And you know, if you get across that river, there's a good shot everything's going to be okay. Do you do it? I mean, I know I would do anything for my family. Anything. If that's what it takes, that's what it takes.
Yeah, dude, yeah, dude.
I mean, that's just it. If you're desperate, you don't have a choice. That makes sense? I'm not saying they're right or wrong. I'm just saying you got to understand where other people are coming from. And you got to remember, they're people. Basically what this is saying, if you have a really good economy, you're going to have a lot of political freedom. Okay? If I'm not worried about where my food's coming from, if I know there's going to be a meal on the table tonight, if I know I got something to wear tomorrow, I know I'm going to be able to go home, put my head on a pillow, and go to sleep, and I'm not going to get killed in my sleep. I'm going to be able to wake up the next day. I have a roof over my head. Then I'm going to worry about politics. Because I can. Because I'm not stressed out thinking, oh my God, what am I going to eat? Am I going to have somewhere to sleep tonight? You know what I mean? Does that make sense? If you have that economic security, you have more political freedom because you're more concerned about that. Everybody get that? Does it make sense? Okay. Economic interdependence. With this, you have the role of rapid transportation, communication, computer networks. Basically, with the increase of this stuff, what was I saying? The increase in transportation, communication, computers, all the countries of the world basically become like this. Okay, we're intertwined. Whether we like it or not, we're intertwined. What happens in our economy affects other economies. You have these multinational corporations, okay? I mean, Nike, okay? Under Armour, Pepsi. Trying to see if I can see any more brands just jumping out at me. I don't even know what that is.
What, my hat?
No, yeah. I know it's a,
Oh.
your hat's like, isn't it farming equipment or something?
No,
What is it?
I don't know. It's just,
Okay, perfect.
It's like a brand of clothing. It's,
Okay, a clothing brand.
you got the,
North Face,
then you got the good old,
Under Armour Steel. Okay?
dude,
Right here. McDonald's. Okay? These are multinational corporations. The companies found throughout the world. You have the changing role of international boundaries. You also have regional integration. These groups set up to work together based on regions, such as the European Union. You have trade agreements, such as the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. That's between U.S., Canada, and Mexico. It was replaced this year by the USMCA, but as far as your test is concerned, NAFTA's where it's at. The World Trade Organization. You also have the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, and international organizations. This is also where you start getting like companies or countries buying and importing, exporting goods. Okay, bringing stuff in, taking stuff out. For example, my jacket right here. This jacket was made in Indonesia. Okay, but I bought it off the internet, bought it off the NFL shop, and I think it shipped from like Jacksonville. So, import, export, that has to do with this. Okay, terrorism. Both developing nations have issues with terrorism. Terrorism is the use of violence and threats to intimidate or coerce for political reasons, and a major cause of terrorism is religious extremism. Now, let's talk about a couple things with this, because I always like to use this as a learning tool, because you got a lot of issues with this kind of stuff around here, as far as stereotypes and things like that. Not saying I have any issues with you guys. I had a kid a couple years back, I mentioned terrorism, and he immediately started talking bad about Islam, and I had to write him up. I think he ended up getting suspended. It was a whole mess. Because he was just being a racist. So I like to use that as an example to explain that terrorism doesn't have a race. Terrorism doesn't have a religion. Okay? Terrorism is just terrorism. It's the use of violence for political reasons. That's it. And stereotypes are wrong anyway. We've talked about this all year. Now, if, let's say, one of you has a brother or a sister who goes and fights in the armed forces. Okay? Goes overseas, fights for our freedom, and is sadly killed. So they're brought back, and you have a funeral for him. And as you're having this funeral for your sibling who was killed, fighting for your freedom, fighting for all of our freedom, there's a group protesting the funeral, saying that God killed your sibling because the United States promotes or doesn't even promote, just tolerates like same-sex marriages or whatever. How would that make you feel if someone's protesting your sibling's funeral for something they had nothing to do with? I mean, that's rightfully so. You'd be angry. I'd be angry. That group, there's a group that does this. Hey, there's a group that does this. Protests the funerals of soldiers. Called Westboro Baptist Church out of Topeka, Kansas. Baptist Church. They're a Christian group, given they're insane. But they still claim to be Christian. And they protest soldiers' funerals because they disagree with what our country does politically. Okay? Now, how would you feel if someone said, well, you're Christian, so you agree with these people? I mean, is that right? No. You can't paint everyone with the same brush. Same way you can't look at, like, Al-Qaeda, and because of Al-Qaeda, yeah, some of them are Muslim, terrorists. It's a terrorist group. You can't say all Muslims are terrorists. Does that make sense? You can't paint a whole group of people with the same paintbrush because of a handful of idiots. Like, okay, you guys grew up in Carroll County. Therefore, you're all racist. You're from the South. You got an accent. You're racist. I know you guys have heard that before. I've heard it before. Sucks. It's not true. That's a stereotype. That's why we don't use them. Make sense? Okay. Anyway, besides the point, I just like to use that as an example so that you guys understand this going forward. Let's say someone walks into Walmart and kills 15 people. Is that an act of terrorism? No, that's just a mass murder. Now, let's say that someone walks into Walmart and kills 15 people because they disagree with Walmart's decision to sell guns and they think they shouldn't be selling guns, so they decide to kill people. That becomes terrorism because that's that political aspect. Does it make sense? Someone drives a car into a crowd. Is that terrorism? Okay? Let's say the guy is a Democrat and drives his car into a crowd at a Trump rally or whatever. Is that terrorism? Yes. It's political. Guy flies a plane into the side of a building on purpose. No. Right now, it's not, because you don't know why. But let's say he flew his plane into the side of an IRS building because he didn't like the way the government used tax money. Or he didn't like that the government taxed him, so he decided to bomb the IRS building. That's terrorism. It's political. Does it make sense? You got to have that political aspect for it to be terrorism. Easy enough? Okay. So some examples. 1972 Munich Olympics. A group of Palestinians take 11 members of the Israeli wrestling team hostage. That's terrorism because you got the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, the political aspect there. Make sense? They end up executing all the hostages. This leads to Golda Meir, the lady we talked about last week, authorizing Operation Wrath of God, where she sends Mossad agents, Israeli special forces, throughout the world to hunt down and kill anyone who had any ties to this attack. I mean, they killed like 200 people worldwide, assassinated them because they had a hand in this attack. You got 9/11. Okay, everybody knows 9/11. Or knows of 9/11. You guys weren't born, which is very weird to me because I can still vividly remember that morning. 9/11, I was 7 years old, second grade. In the morning, my teacher would have the the TV on, just the volume real low, just as like a white noise kind of deal. And another teacher came and knocked on the door that morning, and you know, when you're a kid and you can tell that the adults are talking about something and something's wrong. You don't know what it is, but you can just tell something's wrong. That's how it was. And she walked over and flipped the channel, and that's when the second plane hit the towers. My mom picked me and my sister up, and you could tell she'd been crying. We still weren't sure what was going on. But I mean, how do you explain to a kid that there was a terrorist attack? Basically what happens is there are 4 groups of hijackers take 4 passenger jets, crash 2 of them into the trade towers, the World Trade Center in New York. One of them hits the side of the Pentagon in Arlington. And the 4th plane, Flight 93, was going to hit either the Capitol building or the White House. Don't know which one because it didn't hit its target. The passengers on that plane tried to take it back. They were corralled to the back of the plane and they found an emergency phone. And they were calling their loved ones. And you can, I mean, if you go online, you can find the audio from these phone calls. And in one of them, this guy's talking to his dad. And he's saying, you know, his dad's giving him information about what's going on. And he says, Dad, I gotta go. I gotta go. We're gonna take the plane back. And you hear someone say, let's roll. And they try. I mean, they have nothing. And they're unarmed against these terrorists. And they try to take the plane back. And in the cockpit recording, you can hear them banging on the door, trying to get in. And you can hear the hijacker saying, roll it, roll it. They barrel roll a 747. Okay, and you can hear the people in the cabin crashing, breaking arms, legs, screams of pain, and the plane levels out, and they get up and they try to take the plane again. And you hear the hijacker just go, put it in the ground, put it in the ground. And they just straight in the ground and crash the plane in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Those people are heroes. They knew they weren't going to make it. They knew they were going to die. But instead of letting the terrorists win, they fought back. And I mean, there's hundreds of stories of heroes on that day. The main one is the man with the red bandana. Basically, this guy worked in the trade towers, wrapped a red bandana around his face, and kept going back in to save more people and directing people out of the building. And that's all he was known for. That's all people knew of him on that day, was the man with the red bandana. Ends up being that it was a former lacrosse player from Boston College who, that was his signature. He always had his red bandana with him. And the second his family heard about them talking about this guy, they knew it was him. They knew it was him. I mean, I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time where I could really go into 9/11 and explain it and everything that had to do with it. That's the one thing I hate the most about this hybrid schedule, is I didn't get to do that this year because of the way things were set up. A day, B day, all that. I didn't have time. But anyway, the main things you see with terrorism are car bombings, suicide bombers, and airline hijackers. Because of terrorism, governments have had to respond with increased surveillance. That's why you have so many security cameras everywhere you look now. You have a review of privacy rights, like how do we protect people's privacy but still prevent terrorism from happening? You have increased security at airports, ports, train stations, bus stations, things like that. And while you have more identification badges, photos, you have to show ID more, is to kind of keep track of everybody and prevent something from happening. Make sense? Any questions? Okay. So, if you all have any questions, let me know, leave a comment, shoot me an email. Like I said, I will upload review videos today. Basically, and I'll explain this while I have the video running so I can post this too. The way we're going to do this review is there's a packet. Usually I would have you fill it out, but I'm just going to upload it to Classroom and we're going to go through it together tomorrow. The main part of this review is going to be that packet and these review videos I upload. Okay? A couple years back, there was a kid who was a senior, supposed to graduate in a week. Okay, and they found out, I don't know how it got overlooked, he was missing his history verified credit. He had to pass an SOL to graduate. So they sent him down to Mr. Harmon. This was his room. He's upstairs now. He said, look, you got to get this kid ready for the SOL. He's got to take it. He's got to pass. So Mr. Harmon gave this kid a Chromebook, gave him the packet I'm going to upload tomorrow, or I'll go ahead and upload it today, and so you guys can see it. Gave him that packet, gave him a man, and said, go watch these videos, read through this packet. Kid watched the videos 4 or 5 times. There's a 15-minute version and a 45-minute version. I suggest next couple days be watching the 45-minute version and then watch the 15-minute Friday morning. He watched the videos, read through the packet, did the packet. Kid passed. Okay? So I mean, and I had a kid a couple years back. She transferred in literally 3 days before the SOL, and they made her take the SOL. Okay? She was one question from passing. One question. All she had was the packet I'm going to give you in the videos. And she came that close. You guys can do this.
You should
Yeah.
retake it.
She retook it and still just one question. One question. If I had had more time, she would have been fine. So, like I said, those of you that have transferred in recently, I don't know if you guys will have to take it or not. I will.
So if you
I'll try to get in touch with someone and see if I can get an answer about that.
So if you didn't email us, we don't have to take it.
If I didn't email you, you're not on the list. Doesn't mean you don't have to take it. Something may go sideways and you have to. But as of right now, no. Unless, of course, you're one of the people who transferred in.
I don't know if
Then
emailed me.
you guys assume you have to take it unless you hear otherwise.
I don't know if you emailed me or not.
Then check your email. If you have any questions, let me know. Leave a comment, shoot me an email, something like that, and I will talk to you guys later on.